Imagine throwing the biggest party in human history, but you have to borrow your neighbor's house, ask your family to stay hidden in their rooms, and figure out how to pay $1 billion security bill.
I mean, that is quite the image.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are looking at the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics.
Right, the LA 28 games.
Exactly. And organizers are promising an $18 billion economic boom. They are selling this massive legacy branded as the Games for All.
Which sounds great on paper.
It does. But behind the glossy promotional videos, city officials and activist groups are hammering the alarm bell. Los Angeles is currently racing to secure a really fragmented map of venues.
Yeah, and planners are attempting to engineer this massive no-car transit system. I mean, they're importing 3,000 buses from across the country just to make it work.
And meanwhile, financial watchdogs are frantically maneuvering to shield taxpayers from a $7.1 billion budget that is, well, already showing some cracks.
Plus, the city is navigating a really fierce debate over how to handle the 5,300 unhoused individuals living in the immediate shadows of these Olympic sites.
Right. So we gathered a massive stack of sources to figure out if Los Angeles is actually ready for the world. We pulled Mayor Karen Bass's official strategy documents, internal neighborhood council minutes, active Reddit threads from local residents, and manifestos from grassroots activist groups.
It is a lot to get through.
It is. And before we jump in, a quick note on these sources for you listening. They contain highly charged political arguments. We are talking about city taxation, aggressive policing, the homelessness crisis.
Very heavy topics.
Very heavy. And we are just here to impartially break down the mechanics of those arguments.
Yeah.
We are not taking sides. We just want to give you the full picture of the forces colliding ahead of 2028.
Let's start with the city's primary strategy. Anyone who follows international sports knows the white elephant trap.
Oh, yeah. Like Athens, Rio, even Beijing.
Exactly. They built these massive, shiny new stadiums that basically sit empty and rust the moment the closing ceremony ends.
Which is a massive waste of money.
It is. So Los Angeles claims they are avoiding this entirely with a strict no-build strategy. The organizers recognized early on that taking on massive construction debt is what bankrupts host cities.
Right.
So by relying entirely on existing mega venues, the official LA 28 report estimates the city generates $162 million in combined cost savings and increased revenue.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because they are doing this through a really intense venue shuffle. Gymnastics takes over Crypto.com Arena downtown. Basketball moves to the newly built Intuit Dome. And swimming events go to SoFi Stadium.
Yeah, that last one is wild.
I am stuck on the mechanics of that. I mean, how do you host Olympic swimming in a football stadium?
Well, you basically build a temporary aquatic center inside the football bowl.
Wait, really? Just right on the field?
Yeah. Engineers construct this elevated deck over the turf. They drop a certified Olympic pool right into the center, and suddenly you have a swimming venue surrounded by 38,000 existing seats.
Oh, wow.
You save hundreds of millions of dollars compared to building a dedicated aquatic center from scratch.
Okay, the financial logic makes total sense. But the geographic reality of this no-build strategy is, well, it's wild. Because you aren't building localized Olympic parks, you have to put events wherever the facilities currently exist.
Right, which spreads everything out.
Exactly. The San Fernando Valley gets BMX and skateboarding. Equestrian events move miles away to Temecula. And they are taking canoe slalom and softball and shipping them entirely out of state to Oklahoma City.
Which is a long way from Los Angeles.
It's basically like if I invite you to a Los Angeles dinner party, but I make you drive all the way to Oklahoma for the soup course, you are going to seriously question my planning skills.
That is a great way to put it.
Does spreading the events out across half of the country dilute the actual economic benefit for local businesses in LA?
Well, the Arleta Neighborhood Council raised this exact concern in their minutes. Their data points to an estimated 5% decline in local ticket sales precisely because of this geographic spread.
Because people just don't want to travel that far.
Right. And when you move softball to Oklahoma, the hotel revenue, the restaurant revenue, and the tax revenue generated by those fans stay in Oklahoma.
Oh, I see. So it's a trade-off.
Exactly. The no-build strategy solves the construction debt problem, but it creates an entirely new deficit. When you scatter the venues from downtown LA to the Midwest, you accidentally engineer the most complex transportation crisis in the city's history.
Which means we need to talk about the transit plan. Because if you are listening to this while sitting in gridlock on the 405 freeway, the phrase "no car Olympics" probably sounds like pure science fiction to you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yet that is the official plan.
Yeah. Planners are mandating a transit-first approach. You physically cannot drive your personal car and park at the stadiums.
Wait, no parking at all?
None. The organizers enforce this by establishing hard security perimeters around the venues and converting the existing parking lots into hospitality zones, broadcast centers, or bus depots.
So how are people getting there?
Well, to make that feasible, the city is importing 3,000 transit buses from transportation departments all across the United States.
3,000 buses. That is a massive fleet.
It is. They are also accelerating the Metro D-Line West Side subway extension, desperately trying to finish it so it can connect the Athletes' Village in Westwood directly to downtown LA.
So they're using the games to force these projects through.
What's fascinating here is that officials view this massive pressure as an accelerator. They want to use the immovable deadline of the opening ceremony to fast-track sidewalk repairs, dedicated bike infrastructure, and rail lines that usually get bogged down in decades of bureaucratic delays.
Right, but even with an army of 3,000 borrowed buses and a new subway line, you still have millions of local residents trying to go to work. I mean, the math does not work unless you subtract the locals.
Which leads to a very controversial request.
Yeah, Mayor Karen Bass made an unprecedented plea, asking local businesses to let their employees work from home for the entire 17 days the games, just to clear the roads.
Just stay home for nearly 3 weeks.
Can you really ask an entire working-class city to simply stay home for 3 weeks? A massive portion of the Los Angeles workforce works in retail, construction, and hospitality. You cannot clean a hotel room or serve food from a laptop on your couch.
You pinpointed the exact friction there. The infrastructure plan relies on the hospitality sector functioning perfectly, but that sector is experiencing massive internal tension right now.
Which brings us to the hotels.
Right. Take the hotel capacity issue. Mayor Bass recently warned the press that Los Angeles simply does not have enough hotel space to accommodate the projected influx of Olympic tourists.
But we pulled active discussions from the local Los Angeles subreddit, and residents see a totally different motive behind that warning.
They definitely do.
The mayor's sudden panic over a hotel shortage perfectly coincides with a massive, highly debated local labor fight. The city council was considering a measure to increase the minimum wage for hospitality and airport workers to $30 an hour ahead of the Olympics.
And the Reddit users argue the hotel shortage is basically a manufactured narrative.
Right. One user called it a fake smokescreen to save wealthy hotel owners some more money.
The workers' argument is that hotels stand to make record-breaking profits during the games, and the workers want their share guaranteed in advance.
And the residents point out that if you actually count the neighboring cities and the explosion of short-term rentals, there are plenty of beds.
Yeah, the beds are there, but the mayor claims an increase in the minimum wage will force hotels to raise their room rates so high that tourists will be priced out of the city, causing a localized economic failure.
So it is a huge standoff.
It exposes the core labor mechanics operating beneath the surface of the games. The city relies on cheap labor to ensure a smooth event. Business owners want to control their operational costs. Meanwhile, the workers recognize that the immovable deadline of the Olympics gives them unprecedented leverage.
Because a strike during the games would be a nightmare.
Catastrophic for the city's image. So the workers are using that threat to demand structural wage changes now.
And solving transit puzzles and labor disputes requires cash, bringing us to the $7.1 billion budget.
That is a staggering number.
LA 28, the private organizing group, promises to cover this entirely through sponsorships, broadcast rights, and ticket sales. But if the math falls apart, the city of Los Angeles is legally on the hook to cover the first $270 million in losses.
And the state covers the next chunk, right?
Exactly. The state of California covers the next $270 million. Anything beyond that falls right back onto the local LA taxpayer.
And the security costs alone are destabilizing that budget. The Los Angeles Police Department released a memo projecting $1.15 billion just for their personnel costs during the games.
$1.15 billion just for personnel. And the LAPD memo admits they can only supply about 1/3 of the peak staffing demand.
Right, they're severely understaffed for something this big.
So how do you secure a massive decentralized global event when your primary police force is short by nearly 70%?
You have to rely on mutual aid agreements. The LAPD has to import thousands of officers from other jurisdictions in California and across the country.
And those outside officers do not work for free.
Exactly. The city has to pay them premium overtime rates, provide their housing, and cover their per diems for weeks. That is why the personnel cost skyrockets to $1.15 billion.
And that number does not even include new surveillance equipment, vehicles, or cybersecurity infrastructure.
Right. Furthermore, city leaders are panicking because the formal master reimbursement agreement is missing.
Wait, what is that?
It's the legal document detailing exactly how LA 28 will pay the city back for these security costs. And it is months overdue.
So the city is just flying blind on $1 billion.
Basically, yes.
Which explains why Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez is stepping in. She looked at this mounting financial risk and introduced 3 specific legislative safeguards to build a wall around the taxpayers.
What is her plan?
First, she demands a strict, independent, third-party audit of the organizing committee's finances. Second, she wants to add a zero-cost principle directly into the city charter.
The mechanics of a charter amendment are vital here.
How does that actually work?
By writing the zero-cost principle into the city charter, the city council legally binds the local government. It prevents future mayors or city councils from quietly dipping into the city's general fund to bail out the private organizing committee if revenues fall short.
So it takes away their ability to just write a blank check.
It essentially turns a political promise into a legal barrier.
That makes sense. Her third proposal is what really caught my eye, though. A proposed 10% tax on the sale of all LA 28 tickets starting in 2027.
A 10% tax on top of Olympic ticket prices.
Yeah. If the city council approves it, the voters will decide on it this November. But let's test the logic of that tax against the mayor's official vision document, which is literally titled Games for All.
Right. They are really pushing that inclusive branding.
The city constantly talks about inclusive economic opportunities and inspiring local youth. But if you slap a 10% tax on Olympic tickets that already cost hundreds of dollars, do you not instantly price out the exact local working-class families who are enduring the traffic and the construction?
You do. It is the fundamental paradox of modern mega events.
It just seems so contradictory.
Well, on one side, you have the aspirational civic legacy, the desire to make the games accessible to the local population. On the other side, you face the cold reality of municipal finance.
Right. Someone has to pay for the buses.
Exactly. Councilwoman Rodriguez's argument relies on the fact that if the city goes bankrupt hosting the event, the working-class residents suffered the most through brutal cuts to parks, libraries, and sanitation services.
I see.
So the ticket tax functions as a necessary financial shield, deliberately sacrificing individual affordability to ensure broader municipal survival.
It is a tough pill to swallow. And speaking of tough municipal realities, securing these pristine, highly policed stadium perimeters crashes directly into the harsh reality of the streets.
You cannot discuss major public events in Los Angeles without addressing the humanitarian debate surrounding the homelessness crisis.
We reviewed a strategy report from LA County indicating clear, systematic plans to remove unhoused people from encampments located near the sports venues.
The county's own statistics show there are over 5,300 unsheltered people living in the immediate areas surrounding the event venues in Los Angeles and the neighboring host cities.
Over 5,000 people.
And the county admits in the same report that they do not currently possess the permanent housing beds or the new funding required to actually house all of these individuals.
The county claims they will not displace anyone without connecting them to housing resources. But the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles strongly attacks the mechanics of this plan.
What is their main argument?
They argue the city's approach does absolutely nothing to solve the root causes of the housing crisis.
Okay.
Things like the lack of affordable units and wage stagnation.
Right.
The legal aid representatives state the plan simply aims to eliminate the visible signs of homelessness for the international television cameras.
So it's about optics.
Entirely.
Yeah.
They argue the city is preparing to use police sweeps and chain-link fences to push the unhoused population out of the camera frame, essentially criminalizing extreme poverty.
Activist groups amplify this viewpoint significantly. We analyze materials from Olympics LA, a grassroots coalition.
Yeah, they are very vocal.
Their central thesis is that the Olympics function as an accelerant for policing, evictions, and urban inequality in every city that hosts them.
How so? Like with landlords?
Yes, exactly. They track how landlords exploit the impending tourism boom. Property owners use the event as justification to evict long-term, lower-income tenants, rapidly converting those apartments into expensive short-term rentals to maximize profits during the games.
So what does this all mean? The irony is striking. The mayor's office views the 2028 Olympics as the ultimate catalyst to permanently fix broken infrastructure and build transit lines that will serve commuters for a century.
But the critics look at the exact same event and see a catalyst for mass displacement and police militarization.
It's like they're looking at two completely different cities,
And history gives the critics plenty of ammunition here.
like past host cities.
Look at the Atlanta Olympics in 1996. City leaders desperately wanted to project the image of a modern cosmopolitan hub.
Right, the New South.
To achieve that pristine image, they aggressively displaced vulnerable residents, cleared out public housing projects, and relied heavily on arrests to sweep the streets.
Wow.
And even after all that, Atlanta still faced heavy international criticism for massive transit failures and hotel shortages. It forces you to critically evaluate what the phrase cleaning up the city actually means, and who specifically gets swept away in the process.
That is a really sobering point. The city is pouring unbelievable amounts of political capital, money, and sheer willpower into achieving 17 days of absolute perfection.
It is a monumental effort.
They're borrowing 3,000 buses from other states. They're demanding that the workforce stay home. They're pulling police officers from across the country. They're essentially holding their breath, freezing the normal chaos of the city, and hoping the machinery holds together until the closing ceremony.
Sustaining that level of artificial control over a sprawling metropolis of nearly 4 million people, while simultaneously processing millions of foreign visitors, requires an unprecedented suspension of reality.
Which leaves you with a critical thought to examine long after the athletes leave. We know the extreme measures required to survive the 17 days of the Olympics.
Right.
But when those 17 days are over, the security fences come down and the Olympic cauldron is finally extinguished. What happens on day 18?
That is the real question.
Will those thousands of imported buses, the newly cleared encampment zones, and the empty hotel rooms leave behind a permanent legacy of a greener, safer, more connected Los Angeles? Or does the artificial control immediately collapse, causing the city to violently snap back to its old realities, leaving taxpayers with a massive hangover and a $7.1 billion bill?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Keep questioning the world around you. We will catch you next time.